Hey Brandon, so the world wants to know who is this man on the behind the camera? What is his testimony? My question is, can you share a little bit of your testimony and how important is it to give your testimony? Is it
Me?
important?
Oh, you're talking about me or you?
You?
Oh, I'm not going to show you your testimony.
No,
That's what you're
you're on
asking.
camera. I'm behind the camera.
Yeah, you do Victor's, I'll do Harry's. Harry goes behind. Let's see. So I've got let's try to make this a long list. I was raised in the church. My grandfather pastored. My father currently pastors. I'm sure you guys a lot know who Keith is. And I was involved in church ever since I was a little kid. And I've had my ups and downs. When I started to become a teenager, I was involved with the church, and I always kind of had one hand in the church, but I also was dealing with things of the world. And I was hungry for material things, and I was hungry for pleasure, and I was hungry for substance abuse and just kind of that physical satisfaction that people tend to look for. And so through high school, I was not necessarily a model Christian. I partied and I drank and I did things that I obviously shouldn't have been doing and still affect me to this day. And I had my fun. I tasted the world, I tasted the pleasures, and when I look back on it, I kind of describe it as like the Ecclesiastes journey, where you go and you test the things of the world and you find that it's all meaningless and worthless, and ultimately you end up back to where you started with God, to realize that that's what matters and that's what counts. And that's kind of I think the journey that I took through most of my teenage years. And in that, God did some serious work through my life. I mean, I dealt with a drug overdose when I was 18, and God preserved me through that. And He had His hand in that circumstance, and that's something that's always been a big part of my testimony. Was not only did He bring me through that event, but He also broke the chains that I had that were tying me down in those things, the addictions that I was dealing with. The drug use and the substance abuse and wanting to go and find those types of pleasures. God was able to break those things in my life, and I was able to find wisdom in those to be able to realize that it's vanity, it's short-lived, it's something that you're just chasing after, this meaninglessness. And that really stuck with me. And then fast forward, learning things like taking things to the Lord. I had an issue with tobacco. I would chew and I would smoke and I would use snuff, and it got to the point where I was doing all of them at the same time, and I was throwing pouches in and smoking cigarettes, and like it was really bad. And I got to the point where I had to. It forced myself to. It essentially got to a point where I was so disgusted with my behavior that I was forced to basically lay it at God's feet, and He broke me of that addiction as well. He broke me of that bondage, and a lot of those things that He's been able to do in my life, that He's preserved me from. I have to give Him the glory, because they're things that I would never have been able to do myself. I have a very addictive personality. I have a very easy ability to fall into bad habits and laziness. And because of my relationship with Jesus, He's been able to kind of transform me. I'm not, we talk about these videos and we do a lot of these teachings and things like that. I am, by the world standards, the least qualified person to be able to stand up here and share any teachings from Scripture. I don't have a college degree. I'm a college dropout. High school, I graduated like bottom of the rung, middle of the rung, because I wasn't ever there. I was doing drugs. So I'm not the most educated person, but because of my hunger for wisdom and my hunger for truth, God's been able to kind of shape this ministry into what it is. And, even up to, I dealt with my drug overdose, but even 2 years ago, I had a circumstance where I dealt with a heart failure. And I was in a position where I told my wife goodbye because I was convinced I was dying, and so was everybody that was involved. And I ended up going to the hospital, and the Lord preserved me through that. And the way that He did it was miraculous. He provided support in a circumstance that only He could have moved His hand. And I look at the way that God's been able to interject and work in my life, and as I get older, it's harder and harder to be able to say that what He's been doing is anything that I can take the glory for, because I'm not qualified. I haven't done anything to earn it. I'm not in a position where I can say, oh well, I've got all these degrees and I've got all this experience. I'm a 32-year-old dude who just loves the truth and wants to be able to serve the Lord, and He's been able to turn that into something that's positively impacted a lot of people. So, without going too deep into the weeds on a lot of those details, He's moved miraculously in my life. When it comes to providing financially, when it comes to providing support, and He's poured out His blessings and peace and just all of these different things in my life that I never would have been able to find myself, and I tried to. I did the ecclesiastical walk where I tasted the things of the world, and I found that it provided no fulfillment and no purpose, and it was meaningless, and it ultimately led me to a deeper and a more intimate walk with God. So.